All right, Johnson, there you go. That's your new intro music, man. I did it. I did it just for you. I don't do that for anybody. But how you like it? Do I get a 10 out of 10 on that?
The bobblehead thing says a lot.
It really does. It wasn't bad. I gotta say, it's pretty funny.
Okay, well, I will work on the logistics of that, but I thought the bobblehead thing was pretty good. Bop, 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 bop. The Mission Impossible theme, I mean, that is you, right? If Ethan Hunt was still around, you know, he would call on Johnson to go out there, and they don't call it Mission Easy. They call it Mission Impossible. But it's good to see you tonight. It's Brad Johnson, everybody. I know most people know you. You're a regular on here. And intelreform.org. It is good to see my buddy. It's seriously good to see you. We've not had you on in a while, and it's not been your fault. It's been ours. We've been so busy this month, but I was so excited when I knew you was going to be on tonight. I know we got a lot to talk about. I do want to, first of all, how you been? I know you've been busy and all, but it's good to see you. Everything going okay tonight?
Everything's going well. Absolutely. Thank you.
Good deal, buddy. I do want to ask you your opinion a little bit. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight, but I do want to, before I get too deep into the Iran and situation over in the Middle East, what was your thoughts on Fauci yesterday with this hearing? I think there's a lot of people that are highly ticked right now, because Brad, it seems to be like everything else, and you've said this on this show so many times. You know, I hear people talk about they use the term exposure, and we learned a lot yesterday listening to him talk. But I'm just at a point. I don't care about these hearings because it's just a lot of blather. And I feel like the Republicans held his feet to the fire, and he needed to be, but he took the fifth 111 times. And I just don't think that they are going to follow through with anything, even though Florida's Attorney General is out there saying he's going to start an investigation. A murderer of 20 million people is going to walk free because this man knew. I'm convinced of two things I saw yesterday. I had a mixed opinion about the origins of the virus. I knew it was not the flu. I know a lot of people just blew it off as just, well, you know, they were exaggerated. I almost died from it. So it was something. I do believe that it began in that lab and it got out. And, you know, China tried to hide it, but Fauci got rich, became a millionaire off of this research. And he basically was financing this thing. And that makes him not just somebody that controlled the country with masks. It makes him a mad scientist, man. It all makes him makes Dr. Evil look like Mr. Rogers out of the Austin Power movies, man. We had a modern day Dr. Evil, did we not? But what was your thoughts about all this yesterday?
We did. In fact, I watched the hearings live and found it very interesting. Actually, a lot of things to note out of this that I think are worthwhile mentioning. One, the fervor with which the Democrats defended him continued to decrease as the day went on, because they started seeing the first two, you know, they were like big Fauci defenders on all this stuff. And then the Republicans started pounding away and pointing out thing after thing after thing after thing that really, really looks bad. Like the self-enrichment using federal employees that were under him to get himself $1 million prize, and all the things he did. As all of that came out time after time after time in references to his diary that he'd written talking about how famous he was, as all of those details started to come out, the Democrats started to say less and less and less and less.
It's a good point.
Also, what very few people actually know or recognize, or it really wasn't reported, that not everybody on the Democrat side even showed up that day.
Correct.
So they were short a couple people for that, so that they didn't have as many people to speak in Fauci's favor, because they were looking at it going, you know, this guy's a schmuck. I'm not going to get out there and have my face, you know, associated with that guy, you know. So important thing. Let me say one thing too. You know, actually, I talk about the legal aspects of these things a lot, and I know people sometimes get mad at me because this is what I'm about to say about all of this is not what I want. I'm not saying what I would like to see. What I'd like to see is I think Fauci, the evil scientist, if you stay, and a lot more, which I want to mention on those things as well. But uh, he was given a full federal pardon. Now, one of the things I would like to see, this has been bandied about in the press. One of the things I'd like to see is I think they should challenge the pardon because it was done with the auto pen.
Exactly.
I think that can be challenged. I think there's a basis for it. They might lose, they might win, but I think it should be challenged, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Now, this thing that Rand Paul I've met, I like the guy. We've had a couple of one-on-one meetings a few times, and very smart guy. There's no question. What he's doing with this recommending this prosecution of Fauci based on him taking the fifth 111 times, as you point out, it's unfortunately has zero chance of winning. He'll go to court. It's kind of a harassment move. It's a lot of good publicity. I don't blame Senator Paul for doing it, but he has no chance of winning in court. Again, this is not what I want. It's just this is the law, and the law is there a realistic chance that he could self-incriminate? And if there is, then you have the ability to use the Fifth Amendment to protect your rights. So what everybody has been talking about is if you have an agreement made, then you're on the stand and you have to tell the truth about everything. If you've been given a pardon of any kind, then you have to get up there and say absolutely everything the truth all the way, or the deal is gone. But this is not precisely that situation because he's not on trial per se for that crime. He was giving testimony. So we already saw that the Attorney General in the state of Florida, now the pardon is federal, right? So there's still state cases that can be brought against him. He can still do jail time, but it'll be done by the states, not the federal government. So already the prosecutor, the chief attorney general in Florida said, well, we're going to open an investigation against this guy. So they go to court and they're trying to show contempt of Congress because he took the fifth. And all the lawyer has to say is, well, let's dismiss this because he's under real threat. The attorney general of Florida already announced he's investigating him. So it's completely proper for him to take the fifth. Now, again, like I said, this isn't what I want, but those are the facts. Those are the facts. And that case is going to go absolutely nowhere. It'll get dismissed fairly quickly. I mean, I don't understand all the ins and outs of how that process will be, but at the first opportunity, when the process has run its course, the judge is going to find in favor of Fauci. There's no way around it. He's completely and 100% within his rights to take the fifth in that situation because he is under future danger, criminal prosecution. So, which he deserves. Again, like I said, a lot of stuff he's done bad. The other thing that absolutely nobody is mentioning, nobody, and it just slays me that they let this slide by. Fauci colluded with the Chinese on this. He colluded with the Chinese Communist government
yes, he did.
On all of this stuff.
Yes, he did.
You and I talked about this at the time. There's plenty of evidence out there on that. Why are we not going after him for I don't know if treason is too strong of a thing, but certainly he's 100% colluded with the Chinese against the interests of the United States. I don't know the legal ins and outs of that. I will find out, but I wonder if that's a case that could be prosecuted because of that collusion aspect. There are those emails out there and basically phone calls and things. So what he did is when this blew up, he colluded with the Chinese. The Chinese were providing instructions to not blame it on the Wuhan Institute lab because that's where it got out from. And when this first hit, within the first week of it hitting, I was saying zero chance that this is wet market or anything like that. 100% it came from the lab. The only question is, was it released on purpose or did it escape on accident?
Come on.
I went back and pointed out to everybody that the State Department did a couple of studies on the Wuhan lab, and they were found to have very shoddy protections. It was not up to snuff in their protections, so there's a very, very good chance that this escaped on accident. Now, will we find out for sure? I don't know, but it came from the Wuhan lab. Everybody's convinced of that now. We all know that that's true, and that's the question. Was it released on purpose, or did it escape by accident? I personally lean towards the escape by accident, but one of the things I've always pointed out all along is if it was released on purpose, the Chinese New Year was absolutely the perfect time to do it, which is when it got out, because then all the Chinese from all over the world come to China for Chinese New Year holiday.
And then they leave and go back.
They get infected and they take it back. So if it was planned, I mean, that is exactly the time you plan to do it. So there's circumstantial evidence either way, but he was doing phone calls and emails and things like that with the Chinese, sharing instructions on how to shift the blame away from China Wuhan lab. Now, he was personally motivated to do that as well because he funded them. So there's a certain level of culpability that he has for that research having taken place to begin with. So he's personally motivated to protect himself, to cover his own rear end, to say that it was the wet market and all that sort of stuff. So there's a couple of things going on there, which if he got on trial for treason, to me, that would be his defense, is to say, well, yeah, I don't know anything about that. I was doing it to cover my own ass, so I didn't get blamed for this whole thing, I had no way to know that was going to escape,
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, he didn't come across yesterday. I put it like this. I think Brett Hume said it the best today. If there was any hope of salvaging any respect, and I think you hit a nail on the head, even among the Democrats who were struggling. I saw the hearing for the first hour yesterday, and yes, the first two was the Hassan woman up in New Jersey or New Hampshire was, just thanking him for his 50 years of service and all this stuff, and I wanted to regurgitate. And but when Fetterman basically stated the Republican view, I said he's lost the Dems. But Brad, what Brett Hume said was right. If he had any shred of integrity left or any shred of reputation in the science community, in the eyes of the country, which a lot of people already hated him for what he's done. I've gotten emails just since yesterday of people who lost their family members. And they literally told me, they said, I'm having a hard time with anger right now. I'm having a hard time dealing with this because, I want to see bad things happen to Anthony Fauci, and many of these are Christians, and they said, we don't need to wish harm on somebody. But Brad, there's some palpable feeling of that. And just listening to him and watching him, Britt had a point. He brought this on himself. All it would have taken, and it wouldn't have put him in any jeopardy, if he'd have just apologized yesterday. If he'd have just said, hey, I'm sorry for what the country went through 6 years ago, without, and if he don't want to incriminate himself, don't, but at least show some sympathy. He wasn't even having the guts to turn around and look at those people in that chamber that had been affected by the COVID virus. And when he kept repeating that Fifth Amendment, I think that he damaged himself more. But I think people have caught on to the fact that we were all lied to about this, buddy. Me and you had our channels yanked for that. I mean, every other night, man, I was getting suspended on YouTube, getting suspended on Facebook for just bringing people on. I had a relative that worked in a emergency room. All I wanted him to tell people is, what are you seeing in the COVID patients? What's some of the symptoms that they're getting? Yanked. And if you mention ivermectin, if you mention these drugs, this vaccine's killing you, if you mention the masks are deadly, that they're killing you more than the COVID will, if you mention anything about the China situation, if you even mention China during that time, you were gone. Question to you. Was this an act of war, in your opinion, against our country with China? Because I do believe, and I'm with you, I want to believe it was an accident, but I've got a hard time believing it's an accident. And I think the Chinese saw a weak president. If you remember, it started with Trump, but they were doing this to get Trump out of office. They weaponized this virus to take him down, Brad, and they did. And they knew Biden was on the wings, and they went to town with this, because really 2020 and 21 were the 2 years that this stuff really exploded in this country. What's your thoughts on all that? I said a lot, and I get rambling sometimes, but do you think this was an act of war in our country that just was undeclared?
I mean, that's certainly possible. I mean, there are the two possibilities, as we were just saying earlier. It absolutely could have been done on purpose, and as you pointed out, it was the perfect time to attack Trump. It was the perfect time to spread it. There is solid circumstantial evidence that it was a planned attack. I mean, it could be. But it could also be an accident because, like I said, that lab had been looked at a couple of times, and it was very shoddy protection of the stuff
Correct.
they were working on. So they were having problems with stuff getting out of there all the time already anyway. So you both are not true. It's one or the other. As I said, I lean slightly towards the it escaped thing over it was done on purpose. I think because if it were done on purpose, I think they would have done more to disguise the origin of the Wuhan lab.
Okay.
I think they would have taken it someplace else, like, the wet market in Vietnam or something, just to pick a
Good point.
random country and released it there to disguise the origin of it. Now, having run many intelligence operations and things, back in my CIA days, it would have been just too simple to bypass that clear advantage of having it originate someplace else. Having it originate in Wuhan, right where the lab is, that's had lots of problems, that's kind of dumb. So I mean, there are some contraindications, if you will, that it was done on purpose. So you just sit back and take a look at the whole thing, and I lean towards it escaped by accident. If they had done it on purpose, would that be an act of war? Yeah, I mean, they're using a weapon of mass destruction, a biological weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be, but I'm not sure, until we have a defector that comes out and tells us all the truth about it, if that ever happens, I'm not sure how else we would get it. We've talked about in previous interviews and things about the problem with the intelligence program in China. Now got wrapped up out of just wanton stupidity and incompetence in the CIA, which I'm a big believer in the CIA, big supporter of all of that. I believe in a strong CIA, but when they do something dipstick, you got to say, well, what happened? Because that wouldn't have happened in my day. Why is it happening now? That just shows the incompetence of leadership that has been in recent years. But separate issue there. I'll have to do another 2-hour interview with that subject. But
no, the term dipstick is dear to me. My dad called us boys that all the time, you dipstick. So if the CIA uses that term, now I know where he got it from. My dad may have been secret CIA and I didn't even know about it. So that's all right. Anyway, well, look, I think that most people like myself, I was disgusted about what I saw yesterday, but I kept reminding myself today and yesterday, while it was good television, I personally do not believe that he's going to see justice this side of the grave. I just don't. I think that this is, this pardon thing. I do want to ask you about the pardon. The auto pen, from a legal standpoint, how do you challenge that? In other words, if the Trump administration, I know that there's been some indication that Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI head, and I would even say Ratcliffe and all of them, are looking into the legitimacy of the auto pen. Brad, if it's proven that Biden himself didn't provide that pardon, what's the measures, what's the mechanisms in place to reverse all that? And then it goes back to the Supreme Court, because that way it brings into question all of his decisions, does it not? Including Kajani James Brown Jackson, that don't know what a woman is or a man.
Here's the problem with that. I looked at it a little bit. Here's the problem with that whole thing. It's never come out before. And most law is not actually the written federal statutes or state statutes that say you can only use an auto pen for this, that, or the other. There is no written statute that says that. So there's no law of that nature. There's no case law either. Most law is case law. It's been tried over and over. It's gone to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's made its decisions. So that's case law. That's case law in many cases is more important than the written statutes, because that's what has established the precedent in the law. But unfortunately, in this case, neither of those exist. There's no case law because the auto pin is new, relatively speaking, and so that it's not been challenged. And there's no statutes written to it because it's new and it's just hasn't. There's no statutes written for it.
Gotcha.
So the answer to that question is nobody knows for sure, and you would have to go through the court system all the way up. I can guarantee you it'd end up in the Supreme Court. Well, I guarantee. I believe it would end up in the Supreme Court just because of the nature of the beast. Because it's brand new, they would want to weigh in on it. I would think because it's an important item. Is can you use the auto pen to sign things like pardons? Now, the president signs a lot of things like I have a document right behind me. Where is it? One of these, yeah, so it's behind me on this side, but it's signed by the President of the United States and the Secretary of State. Well, yeah, I guess you can't see it on camera.
I got
you. Just one of the certificates I got, but I guarantee he didn't sign that in person. There'd be too many things like that to do. So the auto pin, has a role, and that's for example, that's fine. Personally, I would think something like a pardon should be signed in blue ink, wet blue ink. I think it should be the real deal. If you want to give a pardon, then by God, put your signature on that thing and make it the real deal. So I think there is room to challenge that. I think they should. I think this is the perfect case for it. Personally, I think it's a great way to go after Fauci. If that pardon doesn't count for Fauci, I mean, holy shisa, that is a big, big, big deal.
Well,
they can go after him for a lot of stuff.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. This pardon goes back to 2014. And am I understanding right? That is when this Wuhan lab was developed, correct? And that was why it raised its eyebrows. That's why Biden post-dated this 2014. And that leads me to another question, Brad. I don't think Fauci was just colluding with the Chinese. I think Fauci was colluding with Biden himself. Because why would Biden give him a 10-year window that anything you've done between 2014 and now, you're good, 2025. In other words, anything that you did between that 10-year period, you're covered. Most pardons don't put timetables on them, do they? I mean, to get like he did Hunter Biden, he got a blank check for a certain length of 10-year period of time. And is that normal? I don't remember pardons being that way. And this is what I got to ask you. To challenge it, does that not raise the possibility that you put Joe Biden on that stand and look him and make him under oath say, yes, I signed that pardon. Yes, I was aware of this person. I was aware of that person's pardon. And make him give an account for why he did it. Do you think that would happen? Boy, that would be peachy. You talk about...
That would be fun.
Let's say that would be some fun TV.
Version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. Well, I don't know if anybody's going to challenge it. I don't know. As far as the pardons being a length of time and those sorts of things, I don't really know. I haven't looked at enough of those to really form an opinion. I just don't look at stuff like that very often, unless it's like this case that applies to something of specific interest to me. I'm sure any Hunter Biden done that for length of time would be able to tell us. What was the last question? Let's see.
Well, the question was about the 2014 lab. Was that around the time that this China lab got built, from what I understand? Is that correct?
I think that was the period of time that he was in that office.
Okay.
It was 10 years was when he was there. So it was just a pardon to cover him for that period of time. But there were a lot of other pardons that were signed by that auto pin too, and a lot of laws and stuff done too. That would be interesting. Oh, I know. Last question is whether Biden himself would be on the stand. I would say almost certainly not. I think it would be extraordinarily difficult. First of all, he's a former president of the United States, and there's going to be a lot of hesitation, even on the part of some of the Republicans, as much as we would all like to see it. He does set precedent that's not necessarily a good thing.
Because they could do it
to
to a
imagine
Republican.
what would happen next with Trump. They'd be after him constantly. So I think there'd be a lot of hesitation to bring him in. And also, too, now it's pretty clear that he's senile, and I think you could challenge his confidence to testify, and I don't think he is confident to testify. I don't think he would remember. I think he'd be confused, sitting up there. So I I don't think it's very realistic to try and get him on the stand. Plus, I'm not sure that that's the way to go. I mean, I think I would be after the staffers
Okay.
and people like that. In fact, that's one of the things that they can do in the Fauci case, because Fauci had a staff of permanent people around him. Those guys did not get a pardon.
Great
That
point.
is that's a weakness. That's a
Great point.
chink in the armor, and that would be where I would be looking right now too. But also too, as we mentioned earlier, Fauci could be in a lot of trouble too on the state level. So he does not have a pardon there. So all of those things are going forward. The question is, can you get a prosecutor to actually sit down and take a look at some of this stuff? And like I said, I'd be going after the staffers, because if they start to testify, and if you can find anything that he did illegal after the pardon, he's liable for that. And can you force him to testify? Probably not. And he knows that if he testifies, he either has to admit to crime or perjure himself. And
Yeah.
So therefore just sit there and take the fifth forever, which is why his lawyer told him to do that, because those are choices: admit to crimes or lie.
I put it like this: if I'm Anthony Fauci tonight, I'm going to go out and ask the Chinese, since they're all good about making these kind of things. Say, I need a bobblehead doll with my image on it, and I push a button that says, under the advice of my counsel, I hereby declare the Fifth Amendment, and I refuse to testify, and just push that button every time it goes on, because I felt like his tongue was going to fall off yesterday saying that so much. It was hilarious. And when Josh Hawley asked him about what's the color of your tie, he said, under advice of counsel. What's the color of the carpet? Under the advice of counsel. If I was Anthony Fauci tonight, I think I would go buy a bobblehead doll and get an electronic thing, a gadget, to just hit a button and say, this is what I got to say. But anyway, it's all these are theories, and I know. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the optics on this from Fauci's perspective, and if you listen to Fauci's opening statement, which, by the way, is also testimony.
It is.
So he
testified
because he wrote it. He read his opening statement. But if he read his opening statement, it's like, this is a travesty of justice. I'm here because I've been persecuted by Senator Rand Paul forever. He's been after me and recommended me for jail and this and that and the other investigation. And Rand Paul, not being a stranger to politics, released those the diary of Fauci just a few days before the hearings were to take place, which is perfect timing. You really got him. And Fauci was all like indignant and I've been persecuted and that's why I'm forced to take the fifth and everything, and under the advice of my lawyers, and because I'm being persecuted, and very indignant. And then as the evening or the day rather wears on, I mean, you could see that by the end of it, he was exhausted. He was absolutely exhausted. All he did there was sit there and read, whatever, 30 words over and over and over and over, 111 times. So, he didn't do much of anything, but it was funny to see him. He became very dispirited as he saw all of the dirt come out. He's reputationally, nobody's going to invite him to their birthday party anymore. And I think he's going to be ground to a nub by these legal proceedings against him. He's still got to defend himself. He's still got to buy lawyers.
Those 6 lawyers wasn't cheap. Yeah, those 6 lawyers wasn't cheap yesterday. He had 6 of them. I got to ask you a question. Somebody sent me something today about a body language expert that said his hand was shaking, and that when he was hiding his hand in his jacket or coat, that's a sign of extreme frustration and tenseness and nervousness. And I don't doubt, because he was being grilled pretty good. But I got to ask you a question, and then we're going to move on to something else, because Fauci's Fauci. We'll have to follow this out. Do you think if they would not have found those diaries that contradicted everything he said in public, would me and you even be talking about this tonight? Would they have brought him back to Congress? Because I think those diaries, Brad, when he was, and the diaries were sick. I mean, he was more worried about a butt call with Barbara Streisand, the Kardashians, being on television, being a celebrity. And again, the country had come out of the world, not just the country. We got some dear friends down under. They shut Australia down. They shut Europe down. They shut England down. They shut all these nations down because of him. and Birch at the NIH. And but if they don't find these diaries, that totally blows up. He literally lied to us so bad that in his diary, it's almost like he was bragging. It was almost like he was mocking what he did. And if they don't find those things, I don't even know if we're talking about this tonight.
And that was a very good point. Hard to say. There was a little bit of other evidence on it, so I think he would have been made to look bad. But there's just no question whatsoever, really bad based on those the diary. I mean, all this stuff about I'm the most famous man in the world, most recognized,
Just arrogant,
most talked about. This guy said I'm the most sexiest man. All this stuff. Yeah, I mean, just runaway, wacky, weird, like ego. He must have been beat up every day during high school and stuff to, have that reaction out of all these things.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really, really wacky out of that. And that just absolutely makes him look bad. You know what, what this reminds me of, and it's, I'm going back in history ways, and I think it's based on a story that's not even true. But, famously, we had a character who was an emperor of ancient Rome called Nero. And Nero supposedly, while a huge fire was burning all of Rome and killing, hundreds, if not thousands of people and destroying everything, and it was going to be something that would take decades to recover from. Famously, they said, Nero played the fiddle while Rome burned.
Rome burned.
And that is what I see of Fauci. I think of him now as Nero Fauci from now on. But he's sort of doing that. He's playing the fiddle and laughing and enjoying and having a great time being this center of the world, and just out of control ego to the point where egomaniac territory, because it's like, I don't care who dies as long as I'm famous, and I don't care what suffering takes place as long as I'm famous. I mean, that's the attitude. And and I think this has a lot of ramifications too, and politically for the upcoming elections. You've got the independents and the conservatives, or the Republicans, all look at Fauci and go, holy shite, this guy's a schmuck. You've got Democrats that supposedly are in favor of this guy and he's a hero, which God knows why that is, but still, that's a minority of people. And they're very upside down on this by 25 points or more. And then you've got this cadre of these people from the Democrat, Socialist, whatever it is movement, the commie movement. And all of the policies they're coming out with, like get rid of the presidency, get rid of the Senate, get rid of police, get rid of prison, get rid of, I'm telling you right now, this is one of those things that does not hold well in the black communities. And the anti-Semitism that we're seeing doesn't hold well in the Jewish communities. So these are fairly big blocks of voters for the Democrat Party who are not liking that stuff. They're not liking what they see. And so I think there's a fairly large block of people that are going to be very dispirited. And these people that are the communists out there running against a Republican, I do not think they're going to get the votes out for those people. I do not think you're going to have people go vote. I think you're going to have a lot of Democrats not vote at all. I just don't think you'll have them come out. And I think you're going to see a fairly charged up Republican side. And I think we're going to
independent side too.
Knock off some Democrat seats out of all this.
I think the independents too.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. I don't want to interrupt you, but I think it's a charged up independent, Brad. I don't think it's independents. Because let's face facts. I think you're the one that told me this. 30% of the country is Democrat, far left, far crazy. 30% is going to be hardcore right, no matter what anything on the right does, they're going to vote. But that's that middle 60%. That's in the middle of the road voter. They are the ones that decide every election. Even people that are registered Republicans, many of them vote independent. And I think that we're facing something that these independents are looking at this stuff, and they are just, I think I saw a poll the other day. It was 75-25, which they're saying we are against what the Democrat Socialist Party stands for. And the thing about it, since we've gotten off on this subject, and I'm glad we did because this is one of the things I want to talk to you about, does it not destroy the narrative that there is a moderate Democrat and there's a difference between a moderate and a left-wing Dem? Because, Hakeem Jeffries, Schumer, all of these moderates, the only one that has condemned this is John Fetterman. And there's a few of them that are scared out there that are running scared that they'll say something about, well, this is not what our party believes. But Brad, when you get down to it, it's exactly what the Democrat Party believes. They've made this monster. I talked to James about this the other night, and I talked to a friend of mine last week about this. They made this monster. When they started this TDS syndrome, they made this monster when they called for open borders and all this stuff the Democrat Party's been pushing, the killing of babies, the anti-Semitism, get rid of the police, get rid of ICE. And guess what's about to happen, buddy? The monster's about to eat the party. Because now Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck can't run from this. They're not condemning it. I heard Chuck Schumer yesterday. He wouldn't even condemn the party. He said, well, we've got a wide tent, and our main goal with the Democrat Party is to destroy Trump. Well, then what Chuck was saying, and that people need to understand, and I hope they do, is that they're the moderate Democrats. They support this stuff, Brad. They support it.
You asked me what's the difference between the two, the moderate Democrats, so-called moderate Democrats, and basically the communists that are outspoken on this. And there is a difference. There is an important difference. The difference is that the communist end of the Democrat Party are very openly vocal about all of this, and the so-called moderates, they lie to us about what they believe. That's the difference. One is truthful about the crap, the other lies about the crap.
Absolutely,
but they don't believe in the crap. So that's the only difference, and it is an important one. I'm actually not being facetious on that point, because they've hidden that agenda for so long, it lets them get away with all the crap, to keep using that term. But this is actually, I think, good for all of us and the United States, because this puts it up on the table. And I just cannot believe that average Joe in the United States is going to vote for all that stuff.
I don't need.
We saw that Fox interview with that one lady who was I think she's deputy of the Democrat Socialist, and who's saying, "Yeah, get rid of that. Yeah, get rid of that. Oh yeah, yes. Over a long-term program, yeah, we're going to get rid of all that." It's like, well, what's left? You call 911 and a social worker shows up. I mean, that's the goal for these guys. Get rid of the police, and then they have. What they do is they have party members come by. And I'm not making this up. This is the plan. You can call a social worker, and then a party member will come by, and let's say you got robbed. Well, then the social worker and the party member will come by, the political officer, and take a look at the situation, and they'll say, well, the guy who robbed you needed it more than you do. So, that's okay then. He can do that.
Good. Well, Lord have mercy.
I've lived in places where there was chaos and no real legal system. I've lived in places like that, and trust me, everybody, that's no good. That the way that works out is through guns, and whoever has the most guns makes the most rules. It's like fiefdoms that belong to little princes and princelings around that rule certain areas, and you do whatever they say, and you're basically slaves. And it's a feudalistic type system is what that breaks down into. And I've been saying this for a decade, that the Democrats all along have been doing that. I don't think they've even understood what they were doing, but they've been destroying the underpinnings of democracy all the way along with all of these things you and I are talking about tonight, but also the gun control and the attack on the family values and all of that sort of thing. Just an example, they're focused on gun control. If you look at the statistics of who gets murdered with a gun, most of the time, the guy that's the shooter, the guy that's the murderer that goes out and kills people, comes from a broken home scenario. So you want to impact gun violence? It's not attacking guns. It's creating solid family foundations, because those guys don't produce criminals. So an intact family, mommy and daddy at home with the kids, raising the kids, those just don't tend to produce criminals. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, but if you really want to stop violent crime, that's the way to do it. That's one of the ways to do it. But nobody wants to talk about any of that stuff. They just attack it. And if you look at all of the way that it was set up for black families in particular, I mean, my God, it's a sin against nature what they've done to black families by creating the social programs such that if a black woman gets pregnant and has a baby out of wedlock, she gets a raise, from welfare.
Come on.
And it destroyed the black families. And if you look traditionally at the black families in the United States from the very beginning, they were very family oriented and church oriented, and that has been just devastated by liberal policies and so on. So I mean, it just goes to everything. They've been decimating the underpinning of the United States from the very beginning. And as you say, Chuck Schumer had made that comment. They reap the whirlwind, and this is the whirlwind, and they're reaping it. And those guys are gonna be out on their heads here very soon. I think most of those guys are going to start to be challenged, and the Nancy Pelosi, and she's, I think, preserved by wax mainly at this point. And Chuck Schumer, because those guys are, I'm not sure all the gray cells are still there. I mean, also there's Republicans like that too, like Mitch McConnell. I mean, that guy needs to move on. He was never very good anyway. He needs to move on. But those guys that are old and out of shape and just don't really have all the brain cells left and aren't functioning all that well, they got to go anyway. But who's going to replace them in the Democrat side? And it's going to be these socialists.
You think?
These communists.
You think? You think Thune should go?
Because they're winning the primaries.
Yeah.
There'll be some holdout places. There's going to be some of the blue states that are going to elect Fettermans and people like that, but not it'll probably be 50-50. So what happens to the Democrat Party? 50% of them are communists that that most people just won't support. Well, they're going to lose. They're going to lose elections.
Yeah, I'm with you, buddy.
So
I'm with you.
We'll see. If the Republicans hold their own, that's a major victory for the Republicans. A major victory if they just hold their own. If they gain some seats, I mean, I think that's the kiss of death for the Democrat Party. If they lose a few, I don't think it's significant. No. If they get a shellacking, then that's bad.
Main thing is that we hold that majority. I don't care if it's by 5 votes or 2 votes or 3. Got to hold the majority, and I think our chances are a lot better tonight than they were 5 months ago. And I would say they're even better.
The Fauci thing helps.
Fauci helps, and people may think the Iran thing don't. I think the Iran thing helps us more than we believe, because I think most people, they look at what's happening with what Trump's doing in Iran. Not everybody. I'm fully on board with what he's doing. I know you had your questions about it when we talked last time, and I respected those. I listened to what you had to say, and I still believe that you're right in many areas, that this has the potential of blowing up in our face. It still does. And I think what we said, since I do want to ask you before I move on to Iran, do you support Thune being booted? I think he's been the worst Senate Majority Leader we've ever had, ever. And I thought that's a low bar when you think of who we've had as Senate Majority Leaders in history, with Mitch McConnell and others, John Boehner and not John. John went Senate, but the Senate Majority Leaders have let this country down, the Republican side, Brad. But Thune has been a complete disaster and disappointment to me.
Yeah, he's one of those
good old boys.
He's basically, we've tabbed those guys rhinos. He's basically the old-fashioned, if you asked him, he'd say, all right, I'm a traditional conservative, which I guess that's kind of true, because rhinos have run the Republican Party for a long time. So in that sense, he is a traditional Republican, not conservative, but traditional Republican. I don't even really consider myself particularly a Republican. I consider myself a conservative. And I think there's a lot of people within the Republican Party that identify that way. Conservative first and Republican because there's no other place to be. But Thune, he's one of those old-fashioned guys. I don't know. I always think of that as sort of the Bob Dole sort of guy.
Yeah.
That's just that rhino and go along to get along, and let's not do this. Now those guys have been a powerful force. The logic they had behind, and I've interacted with a lot of those guys. I've heard their crapola many times, and the way they say it is, there's no other way to win elections. If we turn conservative, we'll never win the presidency again. We'll never hold the House or Senate again, because we need those Latino votes and all that kind of stuff. And they're like very middle of the road, kind of liberal left. So we have to be in that zone to win election. Every time I've said that to them, I say, I can prove you wrong in 2 words: Reagan and Trump.
Reagan and Trump.
They won.
Absolutely, they did.
That stuff. People will follow somebody who's good, who's got their act together. And Reagan was just, he won his re-election with 48 states or 49 states?
49 states.
Now what it was?
No, Mondale only won Minnesota. Mondale only won Minnesota.
So he lost his home state. They trounced him, just trounced him. And that guy was never a moderate, middle of the road, any of that sort of stuff. So he was a conservative. And of course, they just get mad at me when I say that because I proved how stupid they are, and they don't want to admit to that because they're convinced that they have to have that very moderate liberal perspective as a Republican, and the sort of George Bush, what did he call it? Not benevolent conservatism, but or what was something like that.
I remember the word they used. Yeah,
yeah.
Compassionate,
Anyway,
compassionate conservatism.
Yeah, compassionate conservative,
which was the biggest joke in the world.
Because real conservatism is compassion. That's where compassion is. It makes us all rich. That's compassion. Get good jobs for people.
And it defends the country, Brad. It keeps the country from illegals. It keeps the country from lawlessness. It keeps the company from a lot of things. It's very compassionate, protecting the citizens. So, listen, we got about 10, 15 minutes. I do want to ask you, we're going to go back to China for a minute because there was a report out today, and I'm so glad this happened today because I knew you'd be on tonight. And I know you have dealt with the Chinese. You're no friend of the Chinese, and the Chinese no friend of Brad Johnson's.
It's absolutely true.
But just saying. But there was a report today, Fox News was reporting it, that an investigation has found that in the next few weeks, and your buddy James Akers has got him, he was on here Tuesday night warning us about this because he had come up with the same info, that the Chinese are getting ready to indirectly get involved with this Iranian conflict, whatever you want to call it right now, war, conflict, or whatever people want to define it as. And they are getting ready to ship missiles to Iran, the shoulder to ground to shoulder missiles that could shoot to basically shoot down any American airline or jet that comes over a military plane, and that would present a great danger. Now, two questions. What do you know about that? But number two, if that is true, if that is proven, does that not basically be a blank you from China to us, and all this goodwill that we saw from Trump to Xi back in April just wash down the toilet? Because I'm telling you something, I will be putting tariffs on China, and I would let China know that's unacceptable behavior. And look, I think you've maybe talked about this, maybe we haven't. Brad, I think that whenever you got two big kids on the block, it's inevitable that they're about to tangle. And I just sense that we're on a confrontation course with this country and China at some point. I don't know if it's going to happen right away, but the Chinese are our biggest enemy. Am I correct on that? From somebody that would know. Talking of you would know.
There's absolutely no question that the greatest long-term threat to U.S. national security is China. Period. There's a couple of gaps after that. Second place is empty, third place is empty, and then there's everybody else: Russia and Iran, and terrorism and all of that. Those things are a distant, third, second, fourth, fifth place, all that. China, absolutely number one. I don't know of anyone serious anywhere that has a different take on that. Everybody recognizes it. It's just a fact. So it's hard to dispute. Now, yes, I've heard those rumors that China is doing stuff like that. That was actually came out in one of the press conferences. They were in Air Force One at the time when I think I first heard it mentioned, and they brought that up with President Trump. President Trump said, "Yeah, I'm taking a look at that stuff. If it's true, I'm going to be greatly disappointed, and that's going to be a problem." So I don't know. He may have been sending a message there. I don't know. It could be all sorts of things. It could be rumors that they've put out there to try and make the United States hold off. It could be real. It could be just in the beginning stages. But I will say this: early on, we had an aircraft shot down in Iran, and that aircraft was shot down by Manpad, those man-portable ground-to-air missiles to bring down aircraft.
Yes,
they are dangerous. There's some very sophisticated ones of those, and that would be a pretty big gamble on the part of China. I don't know that they would take that gamble, and I think part of the reason I sort of hesitate to suggest that it's absolutely going to happen on the part of China is because it's very easy to trace those back, and we would know. And also, that's direct confrontation then at that point, and they'd be getting American pilots killed by doing that sort of stuff. So I just don't know. I would if China does it, they've given very, very careful consideration to it, and they're willing to take some real risks for some reason. And I'm not sure that those reasons exist. I'm not sure that they have enough motive to do that sort of thing because they're not bad right now. And I'll say one thing that I think is almost most important is China doesn't understand Trump. They just don't get him. He's a very straightforward guy, but a lot of people they're not used to that, and so they don't believe it. They're second guessing and stuff. But Trump, we all know he's a counterpuncher. He openly talks about it. He does it. Iran pulls some crap and he goes out there and bombs them. What did he say? Bomb the F out of it.
Yeah, he said. Yeah, he used that. He wasn't Mr. Rogers yesterday. Yes, he said that. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think it would be. I just think if it were Biden, I think China would do it in a heartbeat. But with Trump, I think they're a little bit afraid of what he might do. And then let's face it. Yes, China is second, but there's a big, big space between that first and second place as far as military capability and all of that. Plus, I'm not sure that they could get enough man pads on the ground in Iran with people. Those require a little bit of training. I mean, it's not rocket science per se, but it does require some training. And I just don't think that they could get enough of them on the ground to stop Trump if he decides to just take these guys out. Which I just this one of the things too. I go back and forth on this all the time. Is what exactly is Trump doing here? And there's no question he's known from the very beginning that you're just not going to negotiate peace with the Iranians. They're not capable of that. It's not in their matrix, their makeup to be able to have peace with the United States like that. So, and hold to any sort of deal. They just can't. It's not part of them. And so I think Trump's done that from the very beginning. I don't think there's anybody that thinks really otherwise. But what has he done? He's given diplomacy a chance. He's done, tried force. He's tried this. He's tried that. He's trying everything he can do short of just going in and taking them all out. But why? Because he knows it's not going to work. So why? And I think what he's done is build a case to take them out.
Okay.
And
well,
kill them.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. He's given them warning after warning after warning, and they haven't done it. So he said, "Okay, go fine."
No, I'm with you.
You reap the whirlwind, as we've been saying tonight. So,
well, I think he has been
building the case.
Yeah, Brad, he's been as patient as anybody could be. And look, I think most of us, you included, we talked about this back in May when you were here with us, or June, when they were just getting ready to launch these first initial attacks. And we know that this Iranian regime is as dishonest and as crooked and evil as wicked can be. You can't trust them. Anything they sign is not even worth the paper it's written on. And I think they only understand force. And I think Trump actually made a mistake by letting up the gas when he had him by the throat. And he's done that twice now. And I think at some point, you just got to make a decision that, this ain't working. And I'm going to have to just have regime change. And I'm going to just do it till those mullahs are gone. And give it to the Iranian people and say, okay, it's your call now. If you want to continue in this tyranny of Islam, you go right ahead. If you want to free Iran and a democratic run Iran, then you can do that too. But I think that's where we're headed. And only Trump can do this. I will say this as we wrap this up. There will be no other president we've got the chance to do this with but him. That's why he's such an important figure in history. And he has got to do it because I don't see anybody on the Republican side doing it, and I sure don't see anybody on the Democrat side doing it. All the Democrats are going to do, should God forbid they take power, they're just going to rewind all of this effort and give Iran the carte blanche ticket again they've been given for 47 years, and no president has confronted him. And then we're back to square one. We'll be talking about this 10 years from now, that Iran's bombing ships and bombing planes and doing the things they're doing, exporting terror, World War III. Am I right about that?
Absolutely, and we've seen it with their surrogates. The Houthis right now
Yeah.
are big in the press because they're in, attacking Saudi ships in the Red Sea, which is of course why we saw the Saudi Air Force join up with the U.S. Air Force to, or it might have been Navy. I'm not sure who all the planes were coming out of, but it doesn't matter. They joined. They went in joint operations with us to bomb some targets, and they're those surrogates out there like Hamas and people like that. They're all dangerous, and they're in Lebanon and Yemen and all over the place that are making a lot of problems. If Iran is gone, they are not going to have the funding and training and safe haven that they've been having.
I'll agree with
And
that.
you take a lot of wind out of their sails. They're still going to exist as a group, and they may find some other sponsors, but they'll never be what they are today. Never again. And I think we'd see a lot of problems clear up in the Middle East as a result of getting rid of Iran. I don't think there's any doubt of it. I just, like I said, anything other than getting rid of the regime is kind of stupid. That's really the
Totally
bottom
agree.
line.
Totally agree.
If anyone's giving advice to the contrary, I mean, now, if this is a tactic, go through all of this stuff so that when you wipe them out, you say, well, I tried everything. They wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't make a deal. I tried to save them. They wouldn't do it. So I, got to get rid of them. Okay, if that's your tactic, that's smart. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I wouldn't do it. I'd have just gone in the first day and got rid of them all. But I'm that kind of a-hole, I guess. If we're getting in there, let's just get it done and get out. That's my take on the stuff. I would be funding the Kurds to go in there and provide air support, and just feed them ammunition and guns, and just say keep marching that way. When you run into trouble, laze it, and we'll turn it into a smoking hole in the ground, and then keep moving. And let me know when you get to the other border. And that would have been my tactic on it. But I guess politically, I'm not particularly a politician. I'm interested in becoming a politician, but I am interested in winning wars and getting the job done. So that would have been the way I go about it. I don't know. Maybe his way is much smarter. Trump is no dummy, that's for sure. He's a smart guy. So if that's the tactic, if that's what they're doing, then I applaud it. If they're not doing that, then somebody's stupid in that mix somewhere.
Yep. Well, buddy, it's been a good show tonight. Listen, I'm going to give you a few minutes to wrap us up. And one final question and a real quick answer on this. Do you believe that when we're talking about Iran, do you see any other players? I know there's no way to know this, but you mentioned the safe haven. With Israel eliminating the Lebanon situation to our north with the Hezbollah. And then Hamas has been sort of neutralized lately. And these other proxies, if Iran doesn't have her proxies, is there anybody in the Middle East that you would see coming to her aid in helping her cause against America, other than the Chinese, the North Koreans, or Russia?
I would say, well, if they just go in and do what needs to be done to get rid of the regime, it's something that doesn't take that much time. So building up a response and support and things, like just take those manpads, for example, the ground air missiles to take out aircraft. The logistics, you got to build them and transport them, get them on the ground, train people to use them. And that is a pipeline. That takes time. That wouldn't be the most horrible pipeline involved, but all of them would be faced with this. Yeah, I think you'd see, Russia and China take their North Korea. I suppose they would do some things if they could too that would be helpful. Certainly, some of the rocket technology they might have, or something of that nature. I think they would all try, but all of that takes time. Are they doing some of it now? I wouldn't be surprised. And they're probably using surrogates as well to sort of try to disguise the fact that they're doing it. But Iran has continued to shoot drones. I mean, how big was their stockpile?
Yeah.
How many of those places have we destroyed? Are some of these coming in new, or are they the same
have to
things?
be.
I don't know. But I bet the government does. I bet the CIA does, and the U.S. military. I bet they know. So, and they don't seem too alarmed by it. So I'm suspecting this is stuff that's been stockpiled. Well, stockpiles come to an end at some point.
At some point.
So I think if they go in and there's serious about it and just go in to get it over with, I don't think anybody could respond quick enough.
So
If they go ahead.
if Brad Johnson was asked by President Trump to, because I'd put your name in the hat if they come to me, not that they will ever come to me and say, who do you think we should listen to on this? Brad Johnson would be at the top of my list because you make so much sense. And that is something that we just don't have in D.C. It's common sense. And I love President Trump. It's not against him. But I think that, Brad, there's never been a conflict in the Middle East that America's gotten involved in that we've gotten out in good shape. That is a region of the world that nobody understands. James says this to us all the time. It's one of the most complicated regions of the world. It's just, there's spiritual forces over this, there's political forces, but I don't think we understand the dynamics of that region. We never will. And I'm all for what he's trying to do to dismantle this terrorist network. I'm all for that. But I think that he better take his own advice that he gave Israel about the Hamas-Hezbollah thing. You need to get it done quick. And it needs to be precise. Go in there, take care of business, and get us out of there. Let the Middle East build their own democracy or a form of it. They don't want our brand. It was proven to us with Iraq what happened 20 years ago when Iraq rejected what we tried to give them. Is that right? And I'll let you wrap us up on that.
Yes. Our form of government doesn't work with every culture. There's reasons why. I mean, this might piss off some people, but tribal cultures just don't take it to democracy very well. It's just not part of their makeup either. So, and most of these areas are tribal cultures. So they basically need a strongman to be in charge. Probably the best solution that we could hope for in a place like Iran would be the Shah. If
Right.
the Shah's, I believe the sun is out there and available.
Yes.
I mentioned the Kurds, and the Kurds, they would do it. Although that would work, it would not be a problem. But the Kurds are a very serious problem because there's parts of Iran and Iraq and Syria, I think a little bit, where that's basically Kurdish. The real problem is that half of Turkey is Kurdish. And so for Turkey, anytime the Kurds get any sort of leg up or there's any chance of a homeland for the Kurds in any way, shape, or form, they are absolutely, it's a fight to the death from their perspective because, excuse me, they know that if there's a Kurdish homeland, that most of the Kurds are in Turkey. Really, like half the country is Kurdish. So if that half goes out into an independent Kurdistan, Turkey's destroyed. It would just be a tiny thing compared to what it is today. So, that's one of the problems with supporting the Kurds in an area like that. Could they do it? Yeah. Would they be effective? Yeah. Do they want to do it? Yeah. All of that is very possible and doable, but Turkey's going to be against it in every way, shape, and form. They are a strategic ally in the area. If I were negotiating with Turkey, and they had any outlandish demands, and they tend to make outlandish demands, my comment to them would be, well, if you're not a reliable ally in this sort of stuff, maybe we should create a greater Kurdistan, and we'll just take half of Turkey and all the rest of those countries, and the Kurds love us. We can make deals with them. They'd be a better ally than you.
Not a bad idea.
If you want to play hardball, you want to play hardball, I can play hardball. You want to play by those rules? I love those kind of rules. That's always been my take on this stuff. Let the other guy pick the rules, but then let's play by them. That's what the Iranians are doing. They picked the rules. Let's play by them. Let's go get it. But yes, it's a deep and complicated place. Yes, our form of democracy is not going to solve the problem there, but a relatively benevolent Shah of Iran type government, which Jimmy Carter hated. Jimmy Carter was one of the, I'm going to use a bad word here, but Jimmy Carter is probably the biggest fuck up of the last 200 years in the United States. He's caused more wars and pain and suffering than, Fauci times 10. If you start looking and totaling up the numbers, his of deaths that he's caused, he's probably right up there with Hitler. But nobody wants to take a look at that stuff. But the idiotic, stupid decisions that came out of that man.
Yeah.
He didn't have a low IQ, but he should have stuck to peanut farming because of the trouble he caused around the world with his idiotic decisions.
We've been paying a price for that for 47 years, buddy. We've been paying a price for that.
That's absolutely.
Well, buddy, it's been listen, it's so good to see you tonight, and I will see you soon in person. I will work on the bobblehead thing to sharpen it up, tweak it up. The next time you come on, it will sound even more professional than it did tonight. I thought I did a pretty decent job of getting you a theme song, because you are my favorite CIA spy. I'll just say it like that. And
the only one you know is what you're telling
yeah,
me, right?
exactly. But listen, I want to thank you for being with us. Any final thoughts? I'll give you 2 minutes, wrap us up. Any final things that we've talked about tonight you want to reiterate to the people? Because I think I've learned a lot listening to you again tonight. And I think, you know what I took away from tonight, though? There's so much uncertainty in the air about all these things right now. You know, me and you could banter this back and forth. We talk about these things. But there's really no way for anybody to say we've got a handle on this to know exactly how this is going to play out. And that uncertainty, I think, is what America's feeling right now. Because Iran can go either way. The Fauci thing can go either way. And the Congress, you know, we're looking at, Brad, I have to tell you, these Democrat socialists, I know these kids, the stuff they say is so radical, but the margins that they won these primaries by, buddy, I mean, 70 to 20. I mean, 70 to 30, 80 to 20, 65, 35. That's not just the left of the Dems. That's moderates, and that's everybody. That's people that are probably in the middle voting for these people. But the uncertainty of it all is we better get out and vote come November. That's my final word. I'll give you 1 minute to give yours.
Yes, I'm probably a little bit more optimistic about how the elections are going. My feel for this right now, I've been wrong. I've been right more than wrong, but these things can be tough to predict. But my feeling on this right now for the elections, and as you say, things can change. A lot can change between, say over the next 90 days. But I think we're probably headed towards holding about even.
I do too.
Which
I do feel that.
As I said, I think that's going to be, I think you have to consider that a major victory for the Republican side if they hold evens. And I see it. We're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but I think we're okay there. We might even bring over a veteran from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party. And that would be a mighty big slap in the face of Schumer and the Democrat Party. So those things could happen. Those things aside, I do want my final word, what I'd like to say is I think you should actually beef up the bum 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 song and put your bobblehead out there. I think you go commercial with this. And you get the bobblehead so that when you push the head goes, around, and then it sings that song. And you sell that on your website here. And I think everybody listening and watching tonight is gonna have to have one. The Brad song by Chris, and you hit the bobblehead.
The Brad Johnson song. Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, at least it's an idea. It's a thought. I for a first time attempt at that, I thought that was pretty cool. So we can only go up from here, right? We can only go up from here.
I hope so. I'm going to go away on that one still.
I'll see you soon for the steak, man. It's been good having you tonight as always. Thank you for being with me. I'm going to say goodnight to these folks, and I'll see you again soon. And I'll have you back on very soon because I think this thing there's so much going on. We're going to need you. We're going to need your expertise sooner than later, my friend. Have a good night, Brad Johnson. Brad Johnson, intelreform.org is his website, folks. Good to see you, man. And good job tonight, as always, by Mr. Johnson. He is the man. He is a man of men and one of the best buddies. I tell you, he has always been a pleasure to talk to. We've known each other now 7 years. It's hard to believe. It's 2019, late 2018, actually, almost 8 years that we've known each other. And he's just the Johnson you see in this show. I've met him. He's as real as it gets, and that's what I love about him. And that's what I've always respected about him. He's a pretty big deal. I mean, I look at him as a big deal. He served his country, and sometimes people are one way on the show, and you meet him in person, you won't want to have lunch with him. I like to have lunch with Johnson. I like to have supper with him. He's a good guy, and he's one of the heroes. He's one of the good guys, and I mean that. In my book, and I think in your book too. Put some fire in that house for him tonight. Now listen, I'm going to save my fire for later. I've got Leslie Millie in the bullpen coming up at 11 o'clock tonight, and we're going to talk about Fauci on the Chris and Leslie show tonight late. And we're going to run some video by you. It'll be a late night Mac File special. And we'll be back tomorrow night. Magdalene Rose will probably join me by phone tomorrow night, or we'll have some other guests. It'll be late. The next two late news shows will be late. But I think it behooves us to know that, there's a lot. Brad gave us a lot to chew on tonight. A lot to chew on. I think what I took away from this is China's our enemy. We've always known that. Iran is our enemy. Commies are our enemy. Fauci is evil. I've never seen an individual as callous and cold yesterday not have any remorse for the death of 20 million people. And, I think that I hope there is a loophole to get to him beyond the pardon. If I had my way about it tonight, he'd already been in jail. But I do want to say this before I leave. And these opinions are mine. If we didn't learn anything else from yesterday, we need to learn the lesson, and I pray we did, that should we have another COVID event or another weird virus event in this country, we do not let bureaucrats and these scumbags like Anthony Fauci control our churches, control our families, control us as individuals, control our jobs, and that we stand up to this tyranny. Many of you I'm talking to tonight, you lost your job. You lost loved ones. I lost my dad. I wasn't able to see my dad for 3 weeks. He stayed in the hospital by himself for 3 weeks. Nobody could get in to see him. Nobody. He died basically alone. I'm not the only one that's happened to. But many of us have been stung by this. Somebody told me that their mother was given remdesivir by the hospital. She died shortly after. There's no way to determine if that was what caused the death, but it was probably contributed. At the very least, it contributed. And all these things, they sting us. I've heard from you. I've heard from your emails. It still stings. It should sting. And I'm going to be honest with you. I want it to sting. But we cannot let this happen ever again. We told people, this network got taken down 3 times for telling people this is a sham. The virus is not. There's a real virus out there. But the weaponization of it and the control of the government that they wanted to control you with through it was evil. I don't care if you wore a mask or not. If you wanted to wear a mask, go get 10. Put 10 of them on your face if you want to. That's up to you. It's a free country. Chris didn't want to wear a mask. You want to take the vaccine? Go get your vaccine. You want to take 6 of them? Take 6. That's up to you. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to even condemn you for it. Because I know a lot of our side, we were condemning people for doing that. And we shouldn't have. It's a free country. People can do what they want to do. We were warning you that there were bad effects to it. We can say that. And we can warn you till we're blue in the face. You can go do it. You just do it. We were proven right. We were proven right. We were proven right we didn't need a mask. We were proven right that we didn't need to sit 6 feet apart. We were proven right that the churches didn't need to close. We were proven right that you didn't need to go to church looking like Mother Teresa with a nun suit on like this every Sunday to worship God freely. But that's what the government was telling you. So I pray if nothing else has come to this, and we're going to talk about this with Leslie tonight a little bit more, that we never let this happen again to us. That we never let this again happen. And we don't let men like Anthony Fauci dictate the terms of these things ever again. That we the people decide what we do. And the government has no role in doing the things they did 6 years ago, 5 years ago now. They never had a mandate to do that. It is 6 years ago. It really was 19, 20, and 21. That was the three main years of this stuff. 21, it was my year. My year is like year I like to die from it. But it was raging in 2020. My grandson was a year old when they started shutting the country down and highways down and so forth. And I was celebrating his first birthday. I never will forget it. We're a better country than that. We're Americans. This ain't communist Russia or communist China. And I will say this. It may sound a little strong. If it's proven that this was done deliberately, if I'm President Trump tonight, I'll let the Chinese know that your days are numbered, just like Iran's, because you've declared war on us. And I'm sorry, you have killed 1 million of my people. Because I'm the president. If I'm the president of the nation, I look at this as I'm the overseer of this nation. It is my job to protect the citizens of this country, both and from enemies, both domestic and foreign. And I have no sympathy for whatever Trump was to do to China. No more than I have any sympathy for the Palestinian people who elected Hamas over the Gaza Strip, cheered them on while they in a barbaric fashion, murdered and raped and destroyed southern Israel and the October 7th massacre in that southern area of Gaza. And then complain to the world, and the media complains to the world, and Christians complain to the world, so-called, about how Israel's conducting her campaign to protect her citizens and to clean Hamas out. I'm sorry, you don't get to dictate the terms of the destruction that you started. And I feel the same way about China tonight. They started this. Fauci needs to be in prison for the rest of his natural-born pathetic life. And I really believe he needs to have something else done to him, but I won't say that on my show. He's got the blood of 20 million people in this world on his hands. If what I heard yesterday from those senators was true, and I have no reason to believe it wasn't, that he knew about this thing, he hid it. Folks, he took the vaccine himself, got a heart attack. He developed myocardia himself and hid it. He knew this vaccine was killing people. He knew the mask was killing people. He himself felt the effects of what they were pushing you to do. But what really ticked me off the most was that part of the diary about Thanksgiving of 2020. Him and Jakey Boy at CNN were hobnobbing on Thanksgiving, probably with no mask. That was the year that they were telling people, you don't need to go to Thanksgiving dinner with your families. And if you go, you need to mask up, sit 6 feet apart in the house. They were demanding people do that in their own homes. Christmas too. While Fauci and his bunch and all these people like that were demanding that of you, they wasn't doing it themselves. I pray we learned a lesson from this. This should never happen again. It should never happen again. I hope in my lifetime we don't deal with this ever again. But if we do see a pestilence, if we see something break out like this again, folks, we had better learn this lesson. That's my concern tonight. And I don't know if we have or not. I don't know if we have. That remains to be seen. But that's my take on it. And I'm going to have a lot more take about it tonight at 11. And Cleo is absolutely right. We do not give medical advice. You make your own informed decisions. You make your own informed decisions. And as I said, you want to go take the vaccine, you knock yourself out. You want to take a mask and stick 10 of them on your head, go do it. Go do it. Nancy says, when will Trump stop calling ye a friend? He's not a friend at all. Well, Nancy, what Trump says publicly and what's going on behind the scenes may be two different things. I'm not a big fan of him calling you a friend either, but he's trying. It's like Brad said tonight. Brad said it best. I think Trump is doing everything he can, diplomatic-wise, to do everything possible to keep peace in this world. He don't want war. But Iran has found out in the last 48 hours that when you're offered an olive branch and you respond to that olive branch by launching surprise attacks against our base in Jordan, and it had not been for the ingenuity of the Air Force and the base over there of knocking those drones down, we probably would have had more American soldiers killed. And because Iran did that, Trump called Trey Yankstepp a fox, and he used the F word. He said, I'm going to blanking kill the blank out of them. And I will not finish the statement because it got worse from there. And that's what he's been doing the last 48 hours. So I think it's just diplomacy, and I think it's just the public statements. I look at it this way, Nance. Bush did the same thing with Putin. There's a lot of people that they say positive things about people in public, but behind the scenes, they are very aware of who they're dealing with. I would like to think that Trump knows who he's dealing with. I hope he does. But I'll put it like this to all of you tonight. That's why our eyes need to be on the eastern sky. Our eyes need to be on the eastern sky tonight, and get ready. And our focus needs to be our faith and strengthening our faith right now and making sure that our call in an election is sure and making sure that we're right spiritually. Pray for this country. We need to get involved in good government. We need to start planning right now to make sure we're registered to vote. We cannot allow this socialist takeover of this country and this government to take place in November. And we sure can't allow it in 28. But a lot's going to rest on the Christian faith and the Christian believers, how we handled this election in 26, coming up, this midterm in 26, and then the presidential race in 28, if we're still here. And who knows that? Nobody knows that. But we need to get involved in good government and make sure that we vote right so we can live peaceably, at least as long as we're here. But I look at Lindsey Graham, and I forgot to talk to Brad about Lindsey Graham. I look at Lindsey Graham in the same realm I do Trump. Lindsey Graham was a good man. Let me change that. Lindsey Graham was a great senator, a tremendous servant of this country. He loved the nation. He got elected. He was actually elected first when the Republican Revolution took place in '94 under Newt Gingrich, and Lindsey was in that freshman class of senators. I remember him during the Clinton impeachment years, and he was a strong voice for that. And but there was always a block with him about Ukraine, and I never could understand it. That he would defend Ukraine to the death in this Ukraine-Russia conflict. And folks, I'm no fan of Russia, but I'm no fan of Ukraine. And I believe we're extorted. We've been extorted. I don't trust either one of them. I know why Lindsey supported the Ukrainians, because they were the underdog, and he had a disdain for Russia that went back to the Reagan years. So I get that, but there was a blind spot. I hope Trump does not have the same blind spot with Yi. And I hope he doesn't have the same blind spot with any leader. I think that the meeting that he had with Bibi, from what I understand, Bibi cleared the air with him and he cleared the air with Bibi. But when he got up, Trump was the one that said, I understand now why Bibi is doing what he's doing. That's a positive sign that maybe the light's turning on and he knows who he's dealing with. And I'll just leave it at that. We're going to talk about all this tonight, because if I get to go, and I'll keep you here for 4 hours, and I don't want to do that. I want you to take an hour and a half off, come back with me and Miss Leslie. We won't be long tonight, and then we're going to play some video, talk about these other things with you. And we got to vote. 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 Anyway. In Q office, I don't think anybody's calling the communists their friends. Not true Americans. It's not true Americans. But anyway. Anyway, and Cleo, yes, it's a diplomatic. Cleo's right, and it's like I just said, it's a diplomatic tool. And many of you like I said, have been stung by this. We're going to talk about all this tonight about COVID and how this has affected the country with Leslie, because I know she's got some opinions about it, and I do too. And when we get on this late night show, we tend to let it all hang out. So, if there's any kids in the house, hide the kids. Hide the kids, because it's going to be a lights out Mac Falls tonight and tomorrow night. And then we'll see what we're going to do over the weekend. Listen, we love you guys. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless this great nation of America. Oh, I'm not going to play the Mission Impossible bobblehead. No, I should do that. But anyway, I might do that tonight. There it is. There it is. And that is the McDonald man's version. I did that just for Johnson. And he should be proud of that. He should be proud of that. But anyway, we'll see you back here at 11 without the Batman shirt on. We might have a cowboy hat on, but we won't be playing that one at midnight. So come on back, be with me, 11 o'clock Eastern. Until then, put some fire in that house if you enjoyed the show. And Brad Johnson tonight. IntelReform.org. We'll see you back here in about an hour and a half, folks. See ya.